In the remote mountain hamlet of Frostpine Ridge, where the pale light of early dawn crept through the jagged peaks of snow-capped mountains, there a sea summits piercing the sky like frozen blades that gleamed with a cruel edge, casting eerie shadows that danced across the frost-covered pines with a ghostly waltz that whispered of ancient secrets, and the air carried the sharp bite of a summer wind mingled with the faint must of pine needles crushed underfoot, a scent that lingered like a memory of the wild preserved in time. The year 2025 unleashed a cataclysmic revelation for a family perched on the brink of ruin, their lives a brittle weave of loyalty, treachery, and the dim flicker of redemption that wavered like a flame in a blizzard, a fragile light struggling against the relentless cold that sought to extinguish it with every gust. Tucked into a secluded valley surrounded by towering cliffs that loomed like silent judges casting verdicts in stone, their faces etched with the scars of millennia, and scattered cabins with smoke curling from chimneys like tendrils of hope rising into the frigid air, a fragile lifeline against the freeze. Frostpine Ridge was a stark refuge where the harshness of winter shaped the people, their stone hearths glowing with warmth that fought the chill with desperate fervor, a place where the beauty of the rugged landscape concealed a web of suppressed passions, buried resentments, and secrets that festered like frostbite beneath the surface, waiting to erupt with the force of an avalanche that could bury them all beneath a white toba. At the heart of this unfolding nightmare was Eira, a 32-year-old mountaineer with piercing green eyes that masked a torrent of suppressed anguish, their depths a forest of hidden pain that mirrored the tangled woods below, her life unraveling after years of a marriage eroded by isolation that carved deep ravines in her soul, a landscape of desolation, and a growing chasm that left her spirit frozen like the ice on the peaks, a cold that seeped into her bones, seeking solace with her cousin, Sigrid Lorn, a pillar in the sea storm that raged around her with unrelenting fury. Sigrid, a 34-year-old herbalist with a steely resolve that hid her own scars, her hands calloused from grinding roots into healing potions, lived in a cabin lined with drying herbs that scented the air with earthiness, a fragrance that offered a fleeting escape from the despair, her home a fortress against the cold that echoed with the silence of a fractured bond, a silence that spoke louder than the howling wind outside. Eira's husband, Torin, a 34-year-old lumberjack with a gruff exterior that hid a restless heart yearning for escape and an obsession with the forest that consumed his nights, his ex a constant companion that sang with each swing, remained in their cabin, its wooden walls a monument to their fading love, a structure weakened by neglect and time, a stark contrast to Sigrid's husband, Rune Lorn, a 35-year-old trapper with a brooding intensity that mirrored Eira's unrest, his quiet presence a spark in the frigid dark that flickered with danger, a flame that could ignite chaos. The shattering moment struck on July 25, 2025, at 11 AM EEST, the current moment as the ridge lay under a blanket of snow, the air thick with the promise of more to come, a thread hanging like a skeleton. When Eira, returning from a grueling climb with her body etching from the cold that seeped into her bones like a parasite, stumbled upon a horror that would splinter her reality into jagged shards, a fracture that would echo through the mountains with a sound like thunder rolling down the slopes. Eira's life had been a climb of endurance and isolation, her marriage to Torin a partnership forged in the shared struggle against the mountains that had crumbled under the weight of silence. A silence that grew heavier with each passing day like a boulder on her chest, his increasing time in the forest a barrier she could breach, its trees a shield against her pleas that fell like snowflakes to melt unheard, lost in the vastness of the wilderness. Their cabin, once warmed by the crackle of the fire that danced in the hearth like a living spirit, and their shared tales that filled the night with life, a tapestry of joy, had grown silent. The howling of the wind a lonely lament that pierced the walls, a sound that carried her sorrow across the valley, a cry unanswered by the peaks. On that fateful morning, as the clock struck 11 AM EEST, aligning with 4 AM SET, the sun struggling to pierce the snow-laden sky, its light a weak thread that barely touched the ground. Eira pushed open the frozen door, her ice axe still in hand, its blade glinting with frost like a shard of her broken trust, and entered, her boots crunching on the floor with a sound that broke the stillness like a crack in the ice. The sight that met her a grainy video on Torin's tablet, recorded in their own bed, showing him in a frenzied, explicit embrace with Freya doll, a 33-year-old ranger with a predatory grin that bared her teeth like a wolf, their bodies entwined in a shocking display of lust that defied all decency, a violation of the sacred, the footage time-stamped from the previous night, its timestamp, a dagger that pierced her heart with every frame, paralyzed her breath stolen by the icy grip of betrayal that squeezed her chest, a vise that crushed her spirit. The air thickened with horror, a spilled mug of mulled wine staining the table with a dark red pool that sprayed like blood, a crimson tide of shame, a cracked family portrait on the mantel, a mute witness that stared with broken eyes, its glass shattered like her trust, a mirror to her shattered world. Eira's scream shattered the stillness, her parka damp with tears that froze on her cheeks like diamonds of despair, as Torin's guilty face appeared, his hands trembling like leaves in a storm. Freya asked, laughter echoing from the device like a taunt from the abyss, a sound that reverberated through her soul. The aftermath unleashed a blizzard of agony that swept through Frostpine Ridge like an avalanche, its force burying the past under a white shroud that smothered all hope. A burial of what once was. Eira fled to Sigrid's cabin, her mind replaying the video with every step that faltered on the icy path, the snow blinding her vision like a veil of tears that obscured her way, while Torin, crushed by shame that gnawed at his core like a beast in the dark, a monster of his own making, admitted the affair began during a ranger patrol when the forest grew silent, a stillness that bred intimacy, spiraling into an obsession that consumed him like a wildfire, a confession that fell from his lips like ashes scattering in the wind, carried away by the storm that mourned with her. Freya, unrepentant, sent a taunting message that dripped with venom, a poison that seared her skin, claiming their passion was unstoppable, a wolf fire that could not be quenched. Her words were slapped in that face that stung like ice. Eira sought refuge with Sigrid, whose cabin became a haven where herbescence offered fleeting calm, a fragrance that could not soothe the tempest within, her sobs mingling with the wine that howled outside like a chorus of the damned. Torin pleaded through letters soaked in regret, his ink smudged with tears that fell like rain, a deluge of sorrow moving to a lean-to where the cold solitude mirrored his isolation, a prison of his own crafting, his apologies lost in the storm that raged without mercy, unanswered and adrift like a lost soul in the wilderness. Months later, Eira learned through ridge gossip that drifted on the wind like a whisper of doom, a harbinger of pain, that Torin and Freya had continued their trysts in a hidden cave, its entrance shrouded in shadow like a crypt, a revelation that reignited her rage like a furnace-stoked aneo, a blaze that consumed her aneo, while Sigrid confessed runes fling with a trapper, his betrayal a mirror to her pain, their shared sorrow a bond that tightened with every tear that fell to the frozen ground, a pool of grief that deepened with each drop. Their bond deepened in the forge of their shared grief, a connection tempered by the fire of their pain, that burned bright like a beacon in the snow, a light in the darkness. But tensions rose as Eira's fury toward Torin clashed with Sigrid's call for peace, a rift that tested their alliance with every heated exchange that filled the room with the crackle of ice, a sound like breaking glass. By 2030, Eira and Sigrid shared Sigrid's cabin, its walls a shelter for their healing that struggled to take root in the frozen soil of their hearts, a garden choked by frost, each finding new love that offered fragile warmth, a flicker against the cold that barely warmed their hands, their voices a hesitant duet that trembled in the air like a bird's first song after a blizzard, a sound that struggled to fill the silence that lingered like a ghost haunting the rafters, a specter that refused to leave. While Torin and Freya's relationship crumbled under the weight of scandal, their love a ruin buried in the snow, a tombstone of their passion. In 2100, descendants unearthed Torin's journals, their pages yellowed and brittle like the bonds of the forest laid bare by time, revealing a tormented soul tied to Frostpine's lore, a narrative that spanned generations with every word etched in pain, a story written in blood and tears, their legacy, a thread in the fabric of the ridge that wove through time with every stitch. By 3000, a descendant, Freya Voss, led a reconciliation effort in a futuristic Frostpine Ridge where cabin etches blended with crystalline peaks that glittered like stars, a constellation of hope, fulfilling a legacy of healing with a heart heavy with the weight of the past, its burden a silent companion that walked beside her like a shadow cast by the moon, a constant reminder, while etches of the affair lingered, shaping family dynamics across dimensions that stretched beyond the horizon like an endless winter that never thawed.